Hi, my spooky friends, and welcome to my new channel. My name is Savannah, and I'm a 21-year-old college student at the University of Alabama, studying psychology and criminal justice. Now, before we get into the case, I just wanted to talk to you guys for a few and kind of explain what I'm doing, what's going to change, and the plans I have for the future. As of now, I would like to focus on solved cases. Later, I might start doing some unsolved cases or missing persons cases. But if that's something you guys would be interested in, please leave a comment below, or you can email me at the email provided in the description box. This also will not be the setup I am going to have hopefully next time. I actually wanted to do something completely different and kind of center around spookiness and Halloween and kind of keep it that way for, year round. But we just got hit by a hurricane where I live, and there is a hole in my roof, which is where our attic is, which is all of our Halloween stuff is, and all of my Halloween stuff is. So I can't get to it. So I kind of had to improvise. I got all my plants. And I got a candle. This is a spooky candle. It's from Bath and Body Works, which I stopped buying from them. Because they test on animals, and it's kind of really sad because they got really good scents. Sad. So today's case is going to be a solved case, and I would like to put a disclaimer at the beginning of this video. This video does involve sex crimes, molestation of a child, sexual abuse, sexual assault, kidnapping, abduction, and murder. If that is triggering to you, or if any of those things are triggering to you, please click off of this video. Now, with that being said, let's dive right on into this case. So, Jacob Wetterling was an 11-year-old boy whose case would go unsolved for over 26 years. Jacob lived on a street that had a dead end in St. Joseph, Minnesota, and he was born on February 17th, 1978. He was known as a funny kid who loved football and wanted to be a football player when he grew up. The morning that Jacob went missing started off as it usually would, so him and his father liked to go fishing a lot, and that's exactly what they did this morning. It would usually be followed with football whenever they got home, and they would always get home in time to start the game, which is exactly what they did when they got home. They watched football together, and it was a nice morning. They always had a lot of fun, and they would watch football until nightfall. They would watch football all day. And this is something that him and his father really bonded over, and it was something that they really loved to do together. His parents left the night of October 22nd, 1989, I believe to go to dinner or to go visit friends, but either way, it was just Jacob, Trevor, their younger sister, Carmen, and they were joined by Jacob's friend, Aaron, as well, and he was also 11, just like Jacob. So at 11 years old, Jacob, his younger brother, Trevor, and their friend Aaron decided to take their bikes down the street to a Tom Thumb, which is basically a convenience store and a gas station. They went to pick up a movie called The Naked Gun while his parents were away, and Merlin Jerzak and his daughter were the boys' neighbors, and they would be the ones who would look after the house. Now, Merlin's daughter would stay at the house with the boys and Carmen, and the father was right next door. So the daughter was able to watch over the boys and also go home if she needed to, just for a minute. But overall, she was there with the boys all night up until they decided to go to Tom Thumb. I am so sorry if you can hear construction in the background. I figured it would stop by now. It's 7 o'clock at night. The sun has fallen, and I'm not really sure why it's going on or why they are doing construction. I'm assuming they're moving trees out of people's yards, but I'm not really sure why a drill's going. Anyways, Marilyn's daughter noticed immediately that Jacob was not with the boys. She went straight to her dad, Merlin, and he immediately called the police. The dispatcher did do everything she could to gather information on Jacob, but this would be the only informative and correct action law enforcement would take. In this whole case, it is a classic case of police not doing their job correctly, partially because they didn't have the funds and partially because they simply, one, didn't believe the boys at first and took a lot of incorrect turns when dealing with the case. The operator took note of what Jacob looked like, what he was wearing, and what exactly the boys saw that night while talking to Jerzak on the phone. She even talked to Trevor, Jacob's brother, personally to try and gather information from him, asking him what the fabric of the jacket was and even asking him what the mask looked like.
Yes, this is Merlin Jerzak calling from 29458 Kiwi Court in St. Joe, out in the township. I'm right now next door to my neighbors, the Jerry Wetterling family.
That's where you're coming
And some of their boys went down to Tom Thumb to pick up a movie, and on their way back, someone stopped them, and we believe that they have one of the boys.
Were they picked up in a vehicle?
Just a second, I'll ask was there a vehicle there, or was he walking? They didn't see a vehicle. This person appeared on the road when they were bicycling back home.
Did they see the individual at all?
Yes, they did. See the individual at all? He had a mask on.
He had a mask on?
Right.
And I want to compile as much information as I
Right.
can. How old is the individual that has not returned?
How old is Jacob? 11.
Okay, what was Jacob last seen wearing?
Okay. What was Jacob wearing?
11-year-old boy. The male party did have a mask on.
Just a minute.
Okay. Those were 15.
He was wearing a red hockey jacket that had police department on it. And it had his name on it.
Police department written in the back?
Police department is on the back. In white letters. In white letters.
You can listen to the full audio with transcripts below. I will link them down below as it's a bit hard to hear the audio, and so I will go ahead and link that down below for you guys. At the end of the call, the dispatcher hangs up from Trevor as police arrive to the house, and from then on, the police would continue to question Merlin's daughter, Trevor, Aaron, and they would start the investigation from there. Now, what happened to Jacob would go unsolved for almost or over 26 years until the perpetrator finally admitted to the abduction and sadly admitted to the murder of Jacob in 2016. On the night of October 22nd, 1989, a man had witnessed 3 boys biking down the empty street on their way to Tom Thumb. He then decided to lie in wait for the 3 boys to return back to the street in order to commit a surprise attack on the boys. This man commanded that the boys lie face down in the ditch, get off their bikes, leave their bikes, and also demanded their ages and their names. Once they did this, he grabbed Jacob and started groping him and told the other 2 boys to run as fast as they possibly could without turning around and looking back. He told the boys that if they did turn around and look back, he would shoot them. So this is exactly what the boys did. Once they were far enough away from Jacob and the man, they did end up looking back and saw that Jacob and the man had disappeared. Once the boys arrived back at the house, it was around 9:30, and this is when the 911 call was placed to dispatchers. Like I said before, the case was not handled very well, partially because of the low funds, but also because police simply did not believe the boys and also did not do their jobs. They believed the boys were lying and they had actually killed Jacob. They thought that they were playing with a gun that had actually gone off or accidentally gone off and tried to cover up their accident. They also had a theory in the beginning of the investigation that Jacob had run away and the boys were simply trying to cover up for him. Mind you, Jacob had never run away from home before. There was no indication that he was going to run away from home. And like I said, he was a very happy kid who loved his life, loved his family. So there was no indication that he would run away from home. This was simply the police trying to open and close a case as soon as possible, or simply trying to lower the importance of the case. Regardless of the police's theories and doubts, a massive search was set at 10:45 p.m. that night. So many people volunteered to help search for Jacob. There were firefighters, civilians, police, Jacob's family. They even had helicopters up in the sky looking over where Jacob was last seen. They found some of Jacob's footprints, some other footprints, and some tire tracks from where Jacob was abducted. And these footprints were down a driveway that was not in the direction of Jacob's house. For some unknown reason, police did not interview anyone around the crime scene or even neighbors of the family besides the Jerzyk family. The property at the end of the driveway was a man named Dan Razier, and he was not even questioned by police until he approached them himself. So Razier actually sought out police himself and told them he saw headlights heading down his driveway that night and turn around midway down the long driveway. He helped with searches on his land, on other farmland, and in wooded areas, the woods where Jacob was last seen by, and everywhere that the police could possibly think of. Now, in 2004, when Dan Razier was named a person of interest, John Sanner, the new county sheriff, released their new theory stating that Razier was involved in Jacob's abduction. Authorities announced that they had new, fresh information, but this was more so just a theory. The theory was that the abductor was actually on foot and the tire track and footprints were not part of the investigation. This also meant that the police thought they were now focusing on a perpetrator that lived nearby and was in walking distance of the crime. The sheriff also stated that they were now focusing on examining potential local suspects, and these suspects included Dan Razier, and he would remain a person of interest throughout the rest of the investigation up until 2016. Once this theory was stated, Razier received many death threats, failed searches of his farm, and had to take a lie detector test. Many suspected Razier of being involved with Jacob's disappearance, and it seemed that police also believed this in 2004, due to the gossip going around the town, and because of some misinformation that helped police come up with this previously stated theory. A man and his girlfriend had been listening in on a police scanner when they overheard the abduction or missing persons of Jacob. They then decided to go visit the site and even almost took the bikes once they found them, but decided not to. On their way out from visiting the crime scene, they ran into a police officer who was parked in a parking lot and had told them of what they found. This was disregarded by the police officer. He did not care, and he sent them on their merry way. But because of the statement that the couple made, they stated that they had turned around in Razier's driveway, and that is the reason he saw headlights in his driveway the night that Jacob went missing. For 6 whole years, Razier would remain their prime suspect regardless of the lack of evidence they had on him. Investigators would try to continue to build a case against him, but would constantly fail and refuse to see evidence that was right in front of their face. There was also a search in 2010 of Razier's house, and because the case had gone on for so long with no leads, the amount of media that showed up at the house was insane. Everyone had been anticipating this search of Razier's house, so they had helicopters flying over. There was an abundant amount of media that were ready to cover the case, and they were really hoping they would find something on him. They ended up plastering Razor's face all across America and specifically across Massachusetts. He would continue to receive death threats and could not even really leave his house along with his parents because he did live on his parents' property. They would constantly get bullied or have encounters out in public. They would always get death threats. I believe they had a lot of vandalism to their property as well. Even though the search did not come up with any new evidence, there was absolutely nothing on Razor. But police still continued to press him and try and search his property and try to get him to confess. And it just never worked because there was nothing tying him to the disappearance. They would often file complaints with the police, stating that they were being harassed by other members of their community, and police would absolutely do nothing about this. They kind of, like I said before, kind of went with the rumors that the community had made up and in 2004, and I guess sided with the community instead of looking at Razor like he was innocent until proven guilty, which never happened in this case. They never ever looked at Razor like he was innocent until proven guilty. They had so many pre-accusations with little to no evidence, and it was all just based on rumors and theories. I often think about what would happen to Razor if this case hadn't been closed, because the amount of death threats and encounters and bullying and the police not doing anything for him or his family is just so insane. And it continued all the way up until the case was closed and solved with a different suspect. Finally, in 2015, police decided to focus the case on a new suspect, Danny Heinrich. Heinrich was actually the first person of interest in the case, but after questioning, he was eventually let go, even though his tires were one of only 2 matches in the entire investigation, and the other match was a car that no longer ran. Investigators blew this off, even though Heinrich was connected to many molestations and was known for his involvement with children and even his involvement with another abduction in the same county. If you don't know what a county is, if you think of America, you have the country and then, you have the country and then you have states in our country. And within those states, we have counties, which are basically just like groups of different cities and towns. I don't really know what the point of them is, but I guess that's kind of why we have county jails, city jails, and then from city to county on upward to state and then federal prisons. The release of Heinrich was just another example of how terribly wrong the investigation was handled. He was a very good suspect and a very good person of interest, and they probably would have been able to connect him to a lot of molestation cases with young boys had they only questioned him further. I'm really sorry if I get this last name wrong. I suck at pronouncing things. But Jared Sherrill was the abducted boy connected to Heinrich whenever he was 12 years old. This was literally in the same year that Jacob was taken. It was in January of 1989, and Jacob was taken in October of 1989. Jared had just finished ice skating with some friends and decided to go to a cafe with them. Once they got to the cafe, a man stopped Jared on the side of the road and asked him for directions. Now, when Jared started pointing in the direction that this man needed to go, the man grabbed him off the street, threw him in the back of his car, and told him to lay face down, and also forced him to put a hat over his head. The man then sexually assaulted him and let him go. He told Jared that if Jared told anybody, he would find Jared and he would kill him. Right after this, he told Jared to run as fast as he could and to not look back, or else he would come find him and kill him. And if that doesn't sound like it relates to Jacob to you, I don't know what does. 9 months later, Jacob Wetterling would be abducted. Back to 2015, even though the DNA from Heinrich matched the DNA found on Jared from 26 years before, he could not be prosecuted because of the statute of limitations. And if that is not like the most frustrating thing, I don't know what is, because the statute of limitations, I know it exists in the United States and Australia, I believe, but I wonder if it exists everywhere else. Either way, I don't know why it exists. It is quite stupid, because had they been able to try Heinrich for the abduction and sexual assault of Jared, they likely would have been able to connect the dots and connect Heinrich to Jared a lot sooner. Even then, at 38 years old, Jared finally found closure and stated, "I don't even need a confession. My heart still goes out to the Wetterlings. I hope that this leads to some form of conclusion or answer for Jacob." He also would continue to wonder why he was let go and poor Jacob wasn't. Something we would find out later. Heinrich would eventually give police a sample of his hair, all of his shoes, and even his tires to be tested. Even though there was only one other match for the tires and that car didn't run, police still stated that the match was not for sure, and neither was the other footprint found at the scene when tested against Heinrich's shoes. So police said that the tire couldn't for certain be a complete match, when there was only one other tire in the entire investigation that could have possibly matched this other tire and this tire track, and the car didn't even run. I will never understand how police were like, oh, it does match, but we're not gonna, say that we've narrowed it down just yet. You're free to go. When it literally matched. It doesn't make any sense to me. Another way police completely messed up this investigation again was a lineup they did for 3 boys during the investigation in 1990. So 1 year after Jared had been sexually assaulted and 1 year after Jacob had been abducted and killed. 2 of these 3 boys claimed they saw a suspicious man driving around Jacob's house a week before the abduction, and the 3rd boy was Jared. None of them ever picked out Heinrich. They never asked Heinrich to speak so Jared could hear his voice. It's likely that Jared would have recognized his voice. It's likely that Jared would have been able to point him out immediately. And they never asked for Heinrich to speak. They never asked for any of the men in the lineup to speak. And what's even crazier is they never asked Trevor or Aaron, Jacob's brother and friend, to join in to look at this lineup. They asked 2 random boys on the side of the street to, but never asked Trevor or Aaron. It makes you wonder why. Why didn't they ask them? Why weren't they invited to come look at this lineup? And why were police so hesitant to even try and progress this case at all? Even from the beginning. I mean, this was 1990, and this case went unsolved for almost 29 years, all because police would not let their witnesses connect dots. It is absolutely insane to me, and it is one of the most frustrating things about this case, because they could have solved it so many years earlier, and suspects or people of interest like Razier would have never had to go through what they went through. It's also very likely that this lineup would have easily led to the suspect being Heinrich. They would have been able to pick out Heinrich from that lineup. These boys saw him and heard him. So, and they may not have seen his face, but they saw his build. And this was a lineup of men of all kinds of different sizes. They were all pretty big, but they were definitely shorter to taller. There wasn't really anyone who matched completely in this lineup. They all looked pretty different. And I really, really, truly believe that if they would have let him speak to Jared, or if they would have let Trevor and Aaron come in, they would have easily made these connections. During this time in 1990, while drunk, Heinrich was also interrogated in connection with the kidnapping and molestation of Jared. It has been stated later that the agents who investigated Heinrich during this time were completely inexperienced and overall did not do a good job. Now, in this interview, Heinrich insists he's being framed, and because interrogators and profilers said he looked innocent, they let him go drunk. They let him leave drunk. They didn't wait till he was sober to question him. They didn't hold him until morning to interrogate him. They let him leave. And I don't know if y'all are different from me, but when I'm drunk, it's a lot easier to lie. It's also very, very hard to read someone's body language who's drunk, because their body language often doesn't match their tone of voice or how they actually would act if they were sober. Later, it would also be stated that this was perhaps the most fatal flaw in the entire investigation due to the suspect being drunk and let go. This is where Heinrich slips away from investigators for almost 2 decades. Now, flipping back to 2015, police began to search Heinrich's parents' house, which is where he had been living. Here they found an abundant amount of suspicious things, including 2 camo outfits, black boots, many police scanners, and a black chest containing pictures of 2 young boys in boxers and in towels getting out of the shower. Once again, he explained these photos away to police, and for some reason, they allowed him to keep the pictures and released him. How many times is this man going to walk into a police station and walk back out with evidence? Doesn't make any sense to me. Absolutely not. Also, Heinrich would go home and eventually burn these photos, this evidence that police basically handed to him. So you may be wondering how Heinrich eventually got caught by police. He didn't. Heinrich was actually caught by Jared, believe it or not, and this is because Jared ended up moving back to Massachusetts in 2015, and he began to research and connect dots from many sexual assault cases from little boys and in Massachusetts and in the connecting counties as well. So there were probably over 100 cases of Jared connecting these dots. Jared was also harassing the police, basically trying to force them to listen to the research he had gathered, but they refused him every time. They did not want to listen to him. They didn't care. I guess because the statute of limitations were up, they felt like he was unreliable. He didn't matter anymore. I don't know, but they refused him every single time. Finally, Jacob's story was featured on CNN's The Hunt, which is an investigative show that talks about, I believe, just unsolved cases. This show actually ended up comparing Jared's case to Jacob's case, and this was the final push to get the FBI to officially reopen the case. Not the police department, the FBI. They finally reopened the case. It also prompted the FBI agents to only look into Heinrich as a possible suspect at this point because of all of the research and evidence that Jared and the Hunt had provided. On July 28th, 2015, agents finally searched the house officially and correctly. This time they left with 4 bins full of little boys' clothing, 19 binders full of child pornography. 19 binders full of child pornography. I'm not talking about like a folder. I'm talking about like an inch to 3-inch binder full of child pornography. You know how many pages that could fit? And do you know how many images that could fit if they were shrunk? That's like thousands and thousands and thousands of photos. Which is, how did they miss that the first time? They also found decades worth of VHS tapes, full of young boys doing normal things. So young boys standing around, young boys bending over, young boys playing in their yard, young boys walking down the street, you name it, anything and everything. It was just simply VHS tapes of little boys. Now, with all of this evidence against him, Heinrich's defense attorneys decided to come up with a plea deal. And on September 1st, 2016, Heinrich would confess to his crimes in return for this plea deal. The plea deal was he would give his confession, and in return for his confession to Jacob's case and Jared's case, he would not be able to be tried with Jacob's murder or abduction. This meant that he would only be allowed to be charged with possession of child pornography, because that is the only other thing they had against him. The maximum sentence for child pornography is 20 years in federal prison. 20 years. And after his confession, he immediately led investigators to Jacob's body, which was identified and confirmed to be Jacob 2 days later on September 3rd, 2016. During Heinrich's confession, he stated he never meant to kill Jacob, only to sexually assault him and let him go. I'm like, wow, you're such a good person. Yay, I'm so sorry you had to kill him. He said he took Jacob to a gravel pit, molested him, and he was on his way back to drop Jacob off near his house when he saw a police car driving by with his lights and sirens on. Heinrich says he got spooked and pulled over, loaded his gun with 2 bullets, and told Jacob to turn around and stare straight ahead while Jacob was crying. He also stated that while Jacob was crying, he told Jacob not to cry. With Jacob still crying, Heinrich pulled the trigger, but the gun did not go off. Instead, it took 2 more bullets for Jacob to fall to the ground and pass away. Heinrich then said he went home for a couple of hours and then went back to the gravel pit and buried Jacob about 100 yards away from where he was molested. He said he returned to the site about a year later and saw that Jacob's jacket and some of his bones had been exposed. They started to show through the ground. So he gathered up as much of the remains as he could, put them into a bag with the jacket, and reburied them across the highway. During the reading of his confession, his parents and other family members are said to have cried and wailed. I honestly believe the plea deal was bull, and I don't know why, but the only reason that the plea deal was even accepted is because Jacob's parents agreed to it as well. I don't know why. I guess because they had the closure they needed and they feared that if they didn't take the plea deal, they would never be led to his body. But at the same time, you never know. And I truly believe that he should have been tried for first-degree murder and gotten a life sentence, if not the death penalty. I'm also curious as to if you guys agree with the death penalty or if you believe he should have gotten the death penalty. I believe a lot of people disagree with it because of their morals, and I completely understand that, and I will never hold it against someone if they have different opinions from me, but I am very curious to see if you guys do believe in the death penalty. Although Heinrich was sentenced to 20 years in prison, many believe that that is just not enough, including me. It is said that Heinrich will always regret taking Jacob that night and wishes he never would have done it. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, maybe if you wouldn't, rape, molest children, you wouldn't have been put in that position in the first place. And obviously, you had motivation. You had premeditated this. You had a gun, you had bullets, you had bags, you had duct tape, you had handcuffs. He had all of this stuff in his car just in case. So clearly he was totally okay with having to resort to this. So I'm not really sure why he will always say that he has regretted this when he had prepared for it. He had prepared to bring a gun, and duct tape and bags. So I just will never understand how this plea deal could have been accepted when looking at everything in hindsight. Danny Heinrich is currently 56 as of now, and his release date is set at March 28th, 2033. I believe he will be 69 years old at that time, which is more than he deserves. So maybe he'll die in prison. I can't say that. Maybe he won't. Maybe he's changed. I don't know. I'm not really one to forgive people like this. I really believe that they get what they deserve. And even if he does get out in 2033, karma, hell, or whatever is probably waiting for him. Something else to note is child molesters, any kind of child abuser, anyone like that usually doesn't do very well in prison. A lot of people don't like children being messed with, and you have a lot of gang members, a lot of murderers, anyone who doesn't mess with children, who really care about children, and they often team up against these child abusers and these child molesters. So I'm wondering how he's doing in there. We'll never know. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will hopefully be posting every week starting this week, and maybe I'll even get around to getting my spooky stuff out. I feel like it'll just fit my theme better. I really am hoping and praying that I will have a whole setup by the time I see you guys next week. Anyways, you guys, let me know what y'all thought of this video. Please leave a comment down below with your opinions, anything you have to say about this case, and let me know what you think about the death penalty and if you think Danny should have received the death penalty. Don't forget to like and subscribe, please, and I will see you guys next week.